Now is it working? Oh my god. So YouTube has forced the new their new beta studio on me now. They don't have the option to go back to the classic studio, and it's changed so many things. Now there's one more step in the process. There's a button you actually have to click to go live back on YouTube. So after you launch and you say start streaming on OBS, you've got to go back to YouTube and click a button that says go live. Didn't have to do that before. Before it was talking to OBS, and OBS, when OBS told it to start streaming, it would just start streaming. Yeah, so YouTube, if you're listening, your new studio beta thing sucks. I mean, I guess I'll get used to it, but it's much harder to find stuff. It took me like 10 minutes to find where to go to live stream. No more is there just a menu over on the left that says live stream. Morning, Techie Dad. So have they forced the new beta studio on you now too? Well, see, I used to have the option to go back to classic, and that option is gone now for me. And I know they roll stuff out channel at a time, kind of thing. So that may happen for you as well. I do like the new graph that they give you during your live stream. So they show you your concurrent viewers, your chat rate, and you watch this little graph go up and down. It does say that my connection is poor, and it's saying that it's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. The MP part is mostly printed, right? That's what that stands for, mostly printed CNC. Good morning, Joe. Oh, so we got Terry and Techie Dad and Ryan Buttram and Slug Prince is here, which is good to see you. I know you usually go to bed around about this time, so glad you popped in, man. Joe Paddock is here. 3D Medic Fence is here. Yeah, this new studio thing sucks. It's going to take some getting used to. Let's see when I click. It's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Are you guys experiencing buffering? Yeah, it'd been a little while. Last week I planned to stream, but I ended up being absolutely sick as a dog. I'm still recovering. I'm not 100% yet. I was sick as a dog. And I just ended up staying in bed the whole day, and that's how I spent both of my days off, and went back to work still sick. There's no such thing as calling in sick in my line of work. So even when you're sick, you go to work. And so that probably slows recovery process a little bit. It's probably why I'm still a little bit under the weather now. Oh, now it says my connection is excellent. So I went with a slight iteration on your name for the tank, Mr. Butcher. So just calling it the Rhino MBT. And yesterday I finished it up, at least in beta form. There may be some things that require iteration as stuff gets printed and tested. Yeah, see, that was me, Techie Dad. I was like, I always was able to click the option to turn off the beta and go back, and now it's gone. There's no link to it anywhere. It just disappeared. So, on your next stream, give yourself some extra time to find things and sort things out, because it's going to be a little different. I found it all and seemed to have got it working. So be aware that you may have to, after you hit start streaming on OBS, go back to the YouTube page and click go live. So the one thing that was standing in my way of getting the tank done was I wanted the gun barrel, the main gun, to have a ratcheting joint in it so that when you raised or lowered it, it would stay. And, you know, we all know in toys, anybody who's had larger toys, especially, you know, of the like Transformers variety, they have what are called ratcheting joints, and that prevents something that's heavier or has a lot of leverage in it. When you lift it up, it clicks into place and stays. Be right back. It's a little dusty. It's one of my Goodwill finds, but what I'm referring to by a ratcheting joint is like in this shoulder joint here, how it clicks in place. Without a ratcheting joint, as heavy as this arm and big as this arm is on this Transformer, it would have a harder time staying up. Now this one's really stiff. This one's probably stiffer than it needs to be. But they put ratcheting joints in so that they will hold position better. And so I wanted to be able to do a 3D printed ratcheting joint. So yesterday I sat down in Blender and designed one. And here was my test piece here. I don't know if it'll focus. Here it goes. There's my test piece here. Two pieces. I just wanted to see if they would ratchet when... And it's not as stiff or as loud. I could adjust things to make it stiffer, and it would be louder if it was stiffer. But it's stiff enough for my purposes. And you can hear by the clicking that it does what it's supposed to do. So once I got that done, I implemented that into the tank gun. So the tank, when assembled, you should be able to click the gun up into positions and it'll stay up and down. Because I was afraid that a regular like joint like this would be, well, this stays right now, but you know, it'd be hit or miss whether it would stay up or not if you raise the turret. And I didn't want that to be. If you raise the gun up, I wanted the gun to stay. So it works well. I don't know how well it will scale up and down, but that if it ends up working the way that this test piece works and stays working this well, it will open things up for me that I can, like I've wanted to design at some point, like large robot that G.I. Joes go inside. So you'd have like a G.I. Joe scaled mech, and be able to have a ratchet joint in the shoulders and things like that. So that's one of those parts that I've always wanted to be able to design. And the funny part was, it took me all of 10 minutes to design it, and it worked on my first attempt. I figured I would end up with, like I did with trying to do the tank treads, and end up with, 7 or 8 iterations before I got where I wanted to be. And good morning to you, Matt. Jake from State Farm. I saw you come in. I just forgot to say good morning. Sorry. So, that's another thing I can pull out of my bag of tricks when designing stuff now. The ratcheting joint. So if there's something that needs to move, but it needs to be able to hold in place, and it's, especially if it's larger, or if it's very long, so it would have a lot of leverage, I'll be able to put a ratcheting joint on it now, so it'll stay. So that was a big hurdle, man. Really, and it's not that difficult. Let me open Blender here. Let's open components. Oh, put you on screen share. And when I come up with components like that are, could be handy to just copy from a file and paste it back in, I'll save it by itself. So I now have a ratchet joint. And so, as you can see, it's really quite simple. It's this one's 12-sided, but it wouldn't be hard to do it, with more or less, depending upon what the need calls for. It's simply 2 pieces. One is a flat-sided. It's a cylinder with multiple flat sides, and you scale it so that those corners here will drag as they come across the outer ring. So there will be, given some time, those joints will loosen up. But I've been clicking that thing all day yesterday and today, and probably way more times than I would click it on any of the models I'm going to print. And it's loosened up some, but it certainly hasn't failed. And so the premise of it, how it works, you attach this to one side and this to the other side of whatever you're wanting to have the ratcheting joint on. And so then as you rotate, you can see as this rotates how those edges come in contact with that. So it will stop it there, but it doesn't have enough contact to keep it from turning. So when a little more force is applied, it will click past that spot until it comes to rest again against the edge. So again, you give it force, it'll click past that spot until it comes to rest against the next bump. That's a good question. Like I said, this one has probably been clicked a couple thousand times, and it's still holding up. Now it could be that I'll need to add a little more size to this part, possibly, and try to skirt that line between not being able to turn at all anymore, and but this one came out pretty well. And I did that by, when I made the 2 parts, I went to rotate it in the viewport, and I saw, okay, well, at this point all the tolerance is gone. They're, you know, those corners are coming into contact with that. Right at about the center. And then you force it past it. So yeah, PLA will probably wear out faster than, say, you know, ABS or one of the more rigid materials. But it works. I've clicked that one thousands of times, and it's still holding up. And the best part about it is, you know, it's 3D printed. If it does wear out, print another one. Yeah, PETG probably would work really well for that. Yeah, and that may be, you know, that may be best if it's going to be a object that you anticipate a lot of movement. And if used in another material, you may have to scale that up or down a little bit, you know, to increase or decrease tolerance. But that's all it would be, is grabbing that and scaling it up or down a little bit to increase or decrease tolerance. Good morning, Dee. Good morning, Ed. So yeah, I mean, the PLA may wear out, but probably not in the purposes that most of us that actually go through with printing this out will use it for. And since this was a $3 Goodwill find, I may end up disassembling this to see how they do their ratchet joints. Taking a screwdriver to it and taking it apart and see if I can reverse engineer how they do their ratchet joint. I know another good way of doing a ratchet joint involves a spring, and I think that's what's in here, is that when the pressure is on it, it actually pushes a mechanism down that's spring loaded that pops back up. And so that may be the case with their ratcheting joints. But I was trying to get away with something that, just like I did with the tank treads, that's fully 3D printed. You know, I didn't want any additional hardware that you had to go to a hardware store or go to Amazon and purchase. I wanted to be able to just print it, snap it together, and go. So that was my goal, was a fully 3D printable ratchet joint, and that's what I went with. But yeah, I think you guys may be right that if you print just the parts that have got to be subjected to the ratchet joint in PETG, it would probably work better, last longer. But the beauty of 3D printing is that's going to be up to you as you print it. If you believe that you're going to be clicking that ratchet joint a lot, then, you know, print it out of PETG. I only have one roll of PETG in the house, and I have not even cracked it open yet. That's the IC3D Construction Orange that I won on, that the Scorpion won for me on Community Catch-Up. Y'all got quiet on me in the chat. Is it? Am I still streaming? Okay. Yeah, yeah, Mike. Good morning. You did hear orange. That construction orange IC3D PETG that I have not cracked open because we were talking about printing stuff in PETG. So yeah, I use that ratchet joint, which you probably see it easier from underneath in the tank's uh, gun. Yeah, it was free. I was planning on using it to print parts for an AM8 upgrade to the A8, but that project has been sidelined a little bit, so that's why I haven't used it. The project's been sidelined by all the other stuff I have to buy and do right now. Which news on the computer front? I decided to build my own rather than buy off the shelf, so that's slowing things down a little bit there. I'm going to build my own because I want it to be able to support multiple GPUs, and all the off-the-shelf computers that I'm finding at all the local retailers, they all have only one PCI Express 16 slot. So because Blender supports multiple GPU rendering, which means I can have a GPU in there that has no monitors hooked up to it, nothing. All it does is help with the heavy lifting when rendering time comes around. So that means a more expensive motherboard than what comes in those off-the-shelf units. And so I thought, well, while I'm at it, I'm gonna go one of two routes, and I haven't decided yet. And that's the thing holding me up right now, is I haven't decided. Do I wait until June when the third generation AMD processors comes out, the Ryzen third gen? They are due out in June, and they're supposed to be much faster with a lot more cores and threads and reasonable price? Or do I, which will probably also drive the prices down even further on previous generation AMD chips, which we're already kind of seeing that prices are coming down. I was looking yesterday at the possibility of building a first gen Threadripper. Oh yeah, I plan on it. I plan on it, John. And good morning, sir. I know mornings are a rough time for you now with your new job, man. So appreciate you stopping in. So I don't know what your guys' opinion are on it, but I'm torn right now of waiting till June when the third gen AMD chips come out, or starting to buy parts and assemble a first gen Threadripper. Because you can get nowadays you can get the first gen 1950X Threadripper for less than $600, and that's 16 core 32 thread. Well, and yeah, exactly. The state computers are in right now, the programs and stuff that I would be using, and even if I wanted to play some games and stuff like that, I've been watching YouTube videos of people streaming with, or gaming with 8th gen Core i3s, and setting things to almost the best settings. And I'm like, the Core i3 is the bottom tier processor for Intel. And well, bottom tier in the non-Celeron family. And so we're at a point right now where even the baseline stuff is delivering well, and even stuff that's a couple generation or two old is delivering fairly well. I looked at somebody did a budget build with an AMD FX processor, and they were gaming at near max settings. So what's the point in buying the latest, greatest, most powerful when the cost versus performance is so small of a difference in performance and such a big difference in price? Which is what had me thinking about the first gen Threadripper. Because if I go with the first gen Threadripper, I'll have less than $600 in the processor, a motherboard that does everything I want it to do, supports plenty of RAM, like more than I'll ever need, supports multiple GPUs, can be had for a couple $100. And if I get a board, I looked at somebody's Blender build. It was a Blender specific PC build, and they went with a multiple GPU setup, and their secondary GPU is the same GPU that I got from my son-in-law. He upgraded and gave me his old one, and it's a GTX 970. So I've got a GTX 970 sitting up in the closet right now. And why it's sitting in the closet and not in my computer is it will not fit in that case. I have to have a real case, a big case. So my goal is it'll get me up and going. I've got a 750 watt power supply that he also gave me because he upgraded to a bigger one. So I got a 750 watt power supply and a 970 GTX sitting in the closet right now. So if I get motherboard, first gen Threadripper, start off with 16 gigs of RAM, but the motherboard I'm getting has 8 slots in it, so it would support more RAM than I'll ever need. But start off with 16 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte solid state, and then after the computer's built, I'll pull the 1 terabyte drive out of this machine and format it to be a storage drive. So then, I would start with 2 terabytes, which is plenty for me, because I won't be loading it down full of games that are 20, 30 gigabytes each. That would get me off the ground and running, and then set aside the money and get myself a 2070 or a 2080 NVIDIA card. And at that point, the 970 would go to being the secondary GPU that is just used to help with rendering processing. And the build I was looking at, they did a 1080 and a 970, and the 970 boosted rendering power by like 30%. So the graphics card that I got for free would boost my rendering, considerably, because it wouldn't be being used to run monitors or anything. Its GPU power would be solely used when I hit that render button. And then the Threadripper also benchmarks out well for Blender. And I guess it's because of having 16 cores and 32 threads. So yeah, right now the plan is, and I guess I should just go ahead and buy myself a case, because the case, the case will work with any setup I end up going with. Go ahead and buy the case, and then do a little research, find what the best motherboard that will handle everything I want it to. Because I also need, the motherboard needs to have a Thunderbolt interface on it, or room to put a Thunderbolt interface on it via PCI Express, because this rig will also end up being my recording rig, and the audio interface that I am looking at is a Thunderbolt audio interface. So I need to have a Thunderbolt port on the computer. whether added through PCI Express or built onto the motherboard. So yeah, that's my main needs, is multiple GPU support, either an available slot to put a Thunderbolt PCI Express card on, or built-in Thunderbolt and go with like I said, I'm looking at the Threadripper just because it's not much difference for the first gen Threadripper in price than it is for the 8th gen Intels, and the i7s, and the 8th gen Intels don't benchmark out as well as the Threadripper does on Blender. They may benchmark out better or as good on games, but that's not what I'm building this machine for. Also looking at some of the benchmarks for audio stuff. The additional cores and threads will help with potential latency issues with recording software. So right now that's my thought, is a 16 core 32 thread Threadripper. Yeah, I was looking at the Ryzen 7, also the 2nd gen Ryzen 7, and I thought about that. Good morning, Don. Hope you're doing well this morning. So I don't know. I think the plan that I formulated over the past couple of weeks is a sound one. Go with the first gen Threadripper. It should handle everything I need it to, both on the 3D modeling side of things and the audio side of things. And then it's just a matter of finding the right motherboard for it to have multiple GPU support and Thunderbolt interface. Well, good, Don. I'm glad you finally got that sorted, man. So back to the 3D modeling side of things. I posted a poll on my Twitter page about what project people want to see next, now that the tank is no longer going to require as much of my attention. And I have not checked it this morning, so let's do that. Let's do that. Let's reload this. There are 8 votes with 8 hours remaining, with an overwhelming majority so far saying they want to see the jet next. With 8 votes, the jet has 75% of those votes. So that means 6 out of 8 people that have voted for the jet. And then 1 person each for the tactical trailer and other. Which I find it funny that the tactical trailer gets 1 more percent when I know they have to have the same number of votes just based upon the percentages. Morning, Walter. Morning, Ron. So there's still 8 hours to go on the poll. So if you have not cast your vote and you don't like the way the vote is looking right now, or you want to solidify, you do like the way it's looking, you want to solidify that, go to my Twitter page and cast your vote within the next 8 hours. So right now the overwhelming majority is for the jet, which the jet, as it was last seen, is where? Oh, forgot where I put it. There it is. This was the jet where I've left off on it, and still so much work to do. Like the canopy's nowhere near done, and there's no landing gear yet. And then the interface for the wings to the body and stuff like that hasn't been made. But I think the jet is looking like it's gonna win out. Yeah. Yeah, Walter, I think you're right, man. I think people are tired of seeing vehicles that roll on the ground from me. So they're looking for a jet. So this is where the jet is presently with so much work to be done on it. Because again, there's no landing gear in sight yet. But I like where it's started. It's, you know, it's got a good beginning. But I'll also have to slice the body up into multiple pieces to make it easier to print. Because a G.I. Joe scale jet, I don't know, you know, if you guys have seen G.I. Joe scale jets, they're large. I mean, so we're talking this jet is probably going to be, you know, that long, or maybe even longer. So I missed my opportunity. I texted the guy. I was like, I don't need to spend the money on it, but I texted the guy, a guy here locally on Craigslist, put up a Anycubic Photon still in box that he was struggling to make rent, and so he hadn't even opened the box yet, and he put it up on Craigslist for $175. And I texted him, and he's like, already sold. But I was like, then take down your ad, man. I may have to, when I get to it, lean on one of you guys who have a resin printer to print the canopy for me, because I want the canopy to be see-through. Yeah, he was trying to sell me on some of the other crap that he was trying to sell. I'm like, no, man, I was only interested in the 3D printer. I don't need any Razor scooters or anything like that. No. But if I could have got a Photon for $175, I would have got a Photon for $175. That would have been one of those. I wouldn't have ran it by the CFO first. I would have just went and bought it and then asked for forgiveness rather than permission. You know, Mike, I would be curious to see how that would come out. So when it's done, you may have to give that a whirl and see, because we would definitely, not want the canopy to be solid. You'd want to be able to see through the canopy. Who knows? Maybe a design like this catches on and it'll give people more reason to buy resin printers, and I can be partly responsible for boosting sales of resin printers. Yeah, Walter, I will, man. I will probably print it FDM style first, just for test fitting purposes. But in my final model, I'll definitely want a transparent and smooth canopy. So it looks like at the end of the 8-hour poll, unless something takes a dramatic jump, that the next project to move forward will be the jet here. So Ryan, you can start getting your naming mojo working. You were excellent at coming up with names, my friend. You named the Scorpion the Mighty Might, which the Roy Holly printed one out. I still haven't printed one. The little go-kart that I designed. I need to print one, but I need to finish printing my tank. I hate leaving my printers unattended when they're printing, and the next print that I need to do is 29 hours, and so maybe I'll start that today, because I'll actually be home for the next 29 plus hours. So what do you guys think of the jet where it sits now? I mean, I've never been really good at designing aircraft. I think based upon the colors I have it rendered in right now, from down here it looks like a big seagull. You left the ANET printing overnight? I did fast forward through your Let's Print Something video this morning while I was waiting for my son to finish getting dressed to take him to school. It looked like it printed well, man. Doesn't look like a bad machine. Just I wish they would be. I just wish they'd be GPL compliant. But yeah, I definitely get like a seagull or something vibe out of it in the colors that I have it rendered in now. But of course, that doesn't mean that's the colors it has to be printed in. That's just the colors I rendered it in. Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason that these companies that are using Marlin shouldn't comply with the GPL. Aside from they just don't understand that they need to. It's not like it takes, a great deal of effort to comply with the GPL. The only reason that I see it happening is when they make changes that they don't want to share immediately to their competitors. That's the only thing I see. But even then, you still should buck up and put it out there eventually. I understand you give yourself a few months of having being the only machine on the market that does this or whatever, but you should know your competition's going to figure it out eventually anyway if they want to. And you can't get too much on your high horse of well, we designed this and we don't want to share, because if you really wanted to design something, you should have designed the firmware from scratch if you didn't want to have to share. Albatross, yeah, it kind of does. You're right. I see that too. Right. I mean, you know, the Marlin team has already added video games. What are you going to do to top that? You can play video games on your 3D printer now in Marlin 2.0. Chris Riley showed us all the results of that. I don't know. I like this design. I like where it's going. I just hope it translates to in hand look as well as I like it on the screen right now. I like the body lines and everything, and I hope they translate well to 3D printing. Now, I don't know if this design would actually fly at all. Certainly not 3D printed and fly, but I mean a real jet designed in this shape. I don't need, you know, I don't know enough about aeronautics to know if I've done some things that would make it not capable of flight. If the wings are too small or anything like that. But if we were getting hung up on total realism, 90% of the jets designed for the G.I. Joe figures would never fly in reality other than the ones that they based specifically off real planes. But they only designed their stuff based off of real things for the first few years, and then they went all crazy. But I understand from a design standpoint doing that, you know, designing stuff off of real stuff for a while, but then, you know, getting creative and having some fun. That's what I did with the Scorpion. The Scorpion was my creative fun. It was all came out of my brain. You know, there's only so much you can do when you're designing a Jeep, for instance, to, you know, to come out of your head. You know, sure, its overall design can be different than anything ever seen, but it's still going to have, you know, doors and seats and wheels and tires and a hood and fenders. You know, there's only so much you're doing there. And, you know, a tank is going to have treads and a body. But with each passing thing that I design like this, it gives us easier starting points to make other iterations of a similar thing, because I'll have the major components already made. So like when I sit down to design my next tank, I don't have to design treads again. I just have to design the layout of the tread, not the actual tread, because the actual tread I've already got designed. So I do plan on making a small tank so that somebody wanting a tank but not wanting to print out this behemoth, because this thing is large, y'all. It fully, you know, well, let's see. Where's my yardstick here? There it is. It is for our metric folks, it's 390 millimeters long. Or right around 15 inches for those of us on Imperial. You know, so that's it. You know, it's a G.I. Joe tank, but even for a G.I. Joe tank, it's a big G.I. Joe tank. Much larger than like the G.I. Joe Mobat. So, I do want to make a smaller tank that doesn't take up as much room or take as many days to print all the parts. So that's, on the to-do list. Um, I need to go buy myself a whiteboard so I can write down all these projects I have in mind and prioritize them. I go buy myself a whiteboard and hang it on this wall right here. And so I can make a list of all the things that I'm working on and put priorities and notes and things like that next to them. So maybe I'll do that this week. I don't know. It would be a lot easier to keep track of things if I would see it written down, and it would remind me, oh yeah, you need to work on this. So that's gonna happen at some point. Has to, needs to. So yeah, with less than 8 hours to go now, we'll see. We'll see, but I believe it's going to be the jet because it looks like the overwhelming majority is going that way. What I meant to say in the post and did not was, if you choose other, leave a comment below to say what the other is, but I did not do that. So somebody chose other and left no explanation as to what other they wanted to see. Because the other thing that poll was going to accomplish if I did that was maybe give me some ideas of some other designs that people would like to see done. So maybe it's not the next one I do, but maybe it's something I haven't thought of yet. Yeah, I want to do helicopters and boats and all sorts of things. Of course, my wife just rolls her eyes every time I mention designing another GI Joe vehicle. But she's like, "Why don't you design something people will actually use?" I'm like, but that's not what inspired me to get into 3D printing and 3D modeling. What inspired me was collecting plastic junk like this. It's another Goodwill find, by the way. I think 50 cents. And this is a G.I. Joe Devilfish. G.I. Joe Devilfish from 1986. 50 cents. Goodwill. So yeah, I was hoping that post on Twitter would also kind of become a sounding board for the stuff that people are interested in seeing. Because, because I want to cover all the areas of these type of vehicles for sure, but like G.I. Joe vehicles and whatnot. But if there's something that people are hankering for, whether it's a boat or a helicopter or a jet or something like that I haven't done yet, if I see a good response and people saying, yeah, I really want a helicopter, then okay, well, the helicopter didn't win the poll this time, but I know now that the helicopter is a priority that people are wanting to see, and that's just a for instance. And the cool thing about these is any of this stuff you do is, they'll come in all different shapes and sizes, as far as, small helicopters like the Cobra Fang in the G.I. Joe line, or large helicopters like the Mamba or the Eagle Hawk, or they're big helicopters and little helicopters. And just like this jet, this may be the first jet and this one may be this big, but that doesn't mean I won't design some small jets, like akin to the Cobra Firebat, or large jets akin to the Cobra Night Raven, which is my favorite G.I. Joe vehicle of all time, and I'm really bummed I no longer have one. Which the Cobra Night Raven was very loosely based off of the SR-71 Blackbird. And it's massive. It's like this long. It's huge. But and boats can go in from the Devilfish, little bitty boat, to the USS Flag aircraft carrier that was 7.5 feet long in the GI Joe toy line. Which, wouldn't that be crazy to come up with another huge boat like the Flag? That would require lots of parts and lots of printing and lots of time and lots of plastic. Although one thing I was kind of surprised about is a lot of people were when I was designing the hauler initially, were vocal about wanting to see it uh, done, and it hasn't gotten a single vote. So, maybe, but of course, there's only been 8 votes. It's not like a lot of people will voice their opinions. But yeah, I think the Jet is leading because people are just tired of ground vehicles from me. So, um, had I not done this poll, this was the one that I was leaning towards working on next. Was the hauler. And I know that's the one Roy Holly wants to see because he wants a place to set all of his vehicles that he's printed because he's printed everything. Right. So right, Mike. So the Jet is winning right now. So if you want to solidify that vote, and that's what you want to see, go vote for that. If there's if you'd rather see the hauler or the tactical trailer, which the tactical trailer is in this file here, I believe. The tactical trailer is almost done, so I mean it wouldn't require a lot of work. I got to rework the tongue, and I got to do all the articulation and stuff on the top half. The bottom half of it's pretty well done. Um, so there's the tactical trailer. That's on that list. And I put stuff that were the stuff I put on the list on the poll were things that I've already started and have a good amount of work into. So it's just a matter of putting some focus into them and finishing them up. If as you've seen, the Jet, the hauler, and the tactical trailer are all, the basic form is done. It's a matter of going in now and putting final touches on it, like the Jet needs landing gear, and um, the assembly process needs to be figured out, and pieces cut apart, and registration marks made, and things like that. The canopy needs to be made. The interior of the cockpit needs to be made. There's still a lot of work to be done on any of these, but I try to put the lion's share of my focus, since I'm only off of work a couple days a week, and on days that I work, I've got other responsibilities and things like that aside. So I mean, I usually end up only getting an hour or two a day, and on days that I work, maybe 15-20 minutes sometimes to sit down and work on this stuff. And so I need to have something that takes the lion's share of that focus. When I do have some seat time at the computer, I need to go, this is the one I need to open up, and this is the one I need to work on. And so that's why I did the polls. I wanted to see what people are most interested in seeing completed next. But it looks like the Jet is winning out there. Notifications. Don is liking stuff. Thank you, Jake from State Farm. Yeah, that Alpha Wise U10 doesn't look or or not U10, W10, whatever, the resin printer. It doesn't look too bad. Oh, there's been more votes. There's been 2 more votes, and the Jet is still winning out. The Jet is winning out even more now. So people are solidifying that. So it's looking like with 7 hours remaining, the Jet is going to be the next project. Something would have to pull a serious come from behind victory. Someone would have to Virginia this thing. They were talking about them on the radio that they had trailed in the last 3 games they were in, and during their NCAA playoff run that ended last night with them being the champs, that their last 3 games they trailed with less than 15 seconds to go in all 3 of their final games, and managed to pull it out and win it. So pretty cool. So yeah, something would have to pull off a serious comeback with 7 hours remaining to stand a chance. So yeah, if whoever voted for other would have commented and said, here's the other that I would like to see, that also gives me ideas. All right, guys, well, everything aside, yeah, it would take a Joel level signal boost to elevate the hauler. No one's voting for it. So, again, I'm surprised because, like I said, there seemed to be a great deal of interest in it. And I was leaning on it as probably the next one I was going to start on, which was the one that I had been speaking to. Get to work, you slacker. Later, Walter. Thanks for stopping by, buddy. But this was one that I had been thinking was going to be my next project, and it was the one that I was reaching out to filament suppliers for, because it's going to take a massive amount of filament because it's going to be huge. I mean, we're talking about from the end of the trailer to the front of the cab of this thing being almost 4 feet long. Got Pooch liking some stuff this morning. So yeah, the hauler's going to be huge. And so I was thinking that was going to be the next project, and that's kind of what I was preparing myself mentally for, and it needs the most work of all the things that are mentioned, because it's, I've completely gutted the suspension. I'm starting over on it. And I have to engineer a bunch of stuff on this, including when I get to the trailer, I'm going to section the trailer off in a way that you can print as many of the flat sections as you want and make the trailer however long you want it. And I'm going to run channels down the trailer. Channels down the middle of the trailer that will allow you, and this will be part of, I'll have to buy some to bring home and sit and use my calipers on it, to run steel rods through the trailer so that the trailer will be able to support some weight. Because, I mean, here we have the tank that's not even, halfway complete, and it's got some heft to it. And that trailer, as it sits on the screen right there, is long enough to hold 2 of these. So, if it's going to need to support that kind of weight, it's going to need to be reinforced. Yeah, Pooch is running through liking all my stuff on Twitter right now. That's why my phone keeps dinging. So yeah, I'm gonna buy some at the cheap steel rod at the hardware store and bring it home, put my calipers on it, and make measurements and stuff. But I want to design some inner channels in the in the trailer to run 2 steel rods through the trailer. That way it'll be able to support the weight of any 3D printed thing you put on it pretty well. I wouldn't say it would be strong enough to be stood on, because you're still going to have, it's still going to be sitting on 3D printed suspension and wheels and tires. But that's the plan for that, is to run a couple steel rods down it. And then if I design the sections of this so that you can print as many or as few sections as you want, make the trailer whatever length you want, then you're just cutting the steel rod to the length you want it to be, and you can make your trailer 3 feet long, or you can make your trailer a foot long, whatever you want. Not much. I was just talking about designing the trailer so that I could run steel rods through the trailer for support, because it's a long trailer and I don't want it to sag in the middle when you put weight on it, or even break. So I'm going to design it to run steel rods through it. So there's a lot of design considerations there. The tactical trailer, like I said, I need to redo the trailer tongue because of different heights that are going to be necessary for hitch connection, because I want this to be universal to connect onto the hitches of multiple different vehicles that I design. So I want to work on trying to design the tongue of the trailer so that it's adjustable, because I think that would be easier than trying to make sure that the ball height on all the vehicles is the same. So I need to make that adjustable. The tactical trailer also needs the hinging mechanisms for the sides of the tactical trailer where the doors are, and I want the doors to lift up, slide in a little bit, then lock and stay, and so that they stay straight out. And the reason for that being is so that it would provide like a roof, and there's going to be tables and stuff, so as the figures are standing underneath, they got that for overhead cover, and then there are little tables so that you can put your, I'll design some 1/18 scale laptops and things like that to print out, see how they look, and put them on the table too, and put storage compartments and stuff for them inside the tactical trailer. And that's the plan, is to have that tactical trailer decked out with, there will be tools and little laptops and things like that inside of it, and storage cubbies for all of it, and tables that latch onto the side of the trailer that also fold up and go inside the trailer. So yeah, the tactical trailer's got a bunch of work to be done, because it's going to have a lot of little details and parts. As you can see, if you can see this on the tactical trailer, these are slots back here, and they will be designed for a table to latch into those slots, and then it'll have legs on this end of the table, and then you open that up, slide it in just a little ways so that it locks in a locked straight out position. And the back of the trailer will open up and put stuff in there too. Yeah. So, it's got a lot of work because it's got a lot of little detail work. And then the things that are on the jet, the interior details of the cockpit need to be built. Nothing's been built yet. Seats, nothing. The canopy needs to be finished. All the connection points for all the individual pieces need to be made, the registration marks and such. And the landing gear has to be cut into the bottom, and then figured out the best way to deal with the functionality of said landing gear. So that looks like that's the thing. With Jet having the commanding lead, that's the thing that's going to start running through my head today, is probably landing gear and canopy, things like that. I'll start wrapping my brain around the process that's going to be moving forward with this design. I will probably make one wheel that flips down up here for the front landing gear, and then probably connect two rear wheels that flip out this way for the rear landing gear. Probably. And I want it so that the landing gear latches in place when you put it up, and that it looks as smooth and close to seamless as possible. So there will be a lot of work involved in that process, because the hardest part there is going to be figuring out where to hinge it and how to hinge it, so that when it swings out, it locks into place with the landing gear at the right height that I want it, and then slides back up and snaps in a way that hides the wheels, but also leaves the bottom nice and flush like it is now. So lots of work to be done, and you guys will be there on the journey, because that'll be if that thing wins, it'll be what I'm working on for the next probably several Tuesdays. So you guys will join me on that journey, and your input will be welcome. Doesn't mean I'll do what you suggest, but you're welcome to suggest. Yes, and cheer me on. I will need much cheering. I will need motivation to keep me going, which I gotta say, the 9 people supporting me on Patreon, you guys are a big motivating factor that makes me go, I need to get this stuff done. I need to get these. They're waiting on it. I know you guys are waiting on the tank for quite a while, and so that was my big push, that even though I had to work yesterday, I sat down and very diligently finished off the last few components that needed to be finished, so that I could say all the parts are available. You guys can now print this in its entirety and let me know if something doesn't work, and we'll work together to fix it. Let me know what's wrong with it, and I'll see if I can't fix it. And I'm going to work on finishing printing it myself. Again, I'm halfway. Roy Holly's farther than I am. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I think the jet's gonna be. It looks like the jet's gonna be the next project if all continues as it seems. All right, guys. Well, we've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes. And since I'm finished with the last project and I'm letting you guys pick which one is the next project, and that doesn't end for another 7 hours. I'm kind of tapped out on material now. Um, Appreciate you guys for hanging out today. Sorry for the confusion at the beginning of the stream because of the YouTube beta studio crap that I'm angry at YouTube for. But thank you guys for joining me today, and we'll pick this up next week where we start focusing on whatever wins the poll that's up there on Twitter. So if you haven't voted yet and you want your opinion to matter, and you want to get your voice in there for which project we work with next time, go to Twitter and click on that poll. And if you choose other, please, for the love of God, comment and tell me what the other that you're interested in seeing is. And thank you guys. There are links to support the channel below if you want to. Thumbs up if you liked the video. Thumbs down if you didn't. As always, we thank you guys for being here, and thank you for joining me on this yet another stream on Tanner 3D. This was the 48th episode of Morning Modeling, and yeah. So see you guys out there on social media, and thanks for everything you guys do. And hopefully when I hit stop streaming on OBS, it stops everything. I'll go back and check YouTube and see if I got to click stop there somewhere too, because apparently you had to hit start twice. Maybe you have to hit stop twice too. Thanks. We'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.